Okay, so I'm now connected to the subject that we're discussing. So I'm just asking Chen to perform a quick scan and review, which he'll do with a team. So he works with a team of other energies that work with him. I obviously only converse with him, and then he basically subjugates down through like a hierarchical tree, if you like, to the other energies that he works with. And he'll then come back and discuss with me. So he's just providing me with a picture now. So I'm seeing a picture in my mind of a person that has what looks to be, again, so this is pictorially, but I decipher that into what I think would actually be happening. So I see a picture of a person that's got what I see to be barbed wire wrapped around them from their feet all the way around their body, right up to their sort of top of the head. They've got a mask over their face. They can't see out of their eyes, and they've got something in their mouth to stop them talking. They've also got lots of connections into the back of the head, which again I see these as dark, almost like cables, like electric cables that have been connected in to the back of this person's head. So Chen's now, so again this is very common, that again the picture that I see is there's no grounding at all. So this person, negative entities tend to put something in place that stop the person being grounded. So I see like a big, almost like a paving slab that's been, if you like, connected under this person's feet, so they don't have the ability to be able to connect themselves to the planet. And all of these things I can then dictate as to what I actually think the person will experience from the pictures that I see. So Chen's now basically doing what I consider to be like a body split. So I see the person in front of me as a human being figure, and then we basically cut them in half, and we break each half apart, so I can look through and actually see inside. And what I can see inside is at least two entities, maybe more. They're actually inside this person. One's connected all the way up through her spine, and the other one is connected into the heart region. So again, these, to me, or the representation I see, are almost like gargoyle looking creatures that you would see on a church, basically. So it's, again, it's a representation pictorially of a negative entity or energy, and the more that I look at them, they tend to morph and change so they shapeshift, change their picture. But this is how I normally encounter them to start with. So for me, it's a sort of standard picture, really. So if I now, from the things that I've seen, if I now give you what I think the person will actually be suffering with, so I would imagine for lack of grounding, that would make them obviously unbalanced, so they would be probably feeling quite clumsy. They will feel disconnected to the earth. They won't feel as though they're connected to anyone around them at all, so probably quite isolated. The barbed wire and some of the entities inside, for me, would be physical pains in and around their body that would be unexplainable by the medical profession, or the medical profession would come up with explanations as to what they think it is, but the actual, the medication they take won't resolve the problem, which would be, again, it's quite normal for the clients that I tend to see. The fact that the mouth and the eyes and the ears have all been, if you like, compromised to a certain degree, means that these negative entities or energies that are connected will actually be controlling thoughts, what the person hears and what they speak. So this person will say things to those around them, loved ones, and what they think they're saying will be changed, and it will come out completely differently. So they may think that they're saying, I'm feeling great, I'm having a good day, but what they'll actually be saying will be something completely negative, and there'll be lots of aggression, lots of disagreements with people around them, loved ones, and the people they're living with. And again, this is quite common. So negative entities and energies that are manipulating this person's state will be changing what they hear and changing what they say. And this, I think, is what makes it very difficult for people in this situation, is that in their own mind they know what they think they're saying to the people around them, but the reaction of those people will be quite at odds with what they think they say, because of course it's almost like an intermediary has actually changed the conversation, and what they hear won't be the same either. So they'll find that they'll get into lots of fights and lots of disharmony at home on the sort of home front.
Is there any way of telling what caused this in the first place? What the attractant was?
So one of the things that tends to be common is obviously drugs. So I'm not saying this particular person's done drugs, but drugs are one of the major causes of most of the people that I tend to see at some point in their life. They've taken some type of drug, and depending, again, it's rather like well, I sort of liken it to peanuts, oddly. That someone can eat a bag of peanuts and they're fine. Another person can take a sip of or a tiny amount of peanut oil, and they go into some sort of anaphylactic shock and almost die. So it seems to be the same with people, really. Some people can take drugs all day long, recreational drugs on weekend, which opens up the etheric body, and they have no problems. Another person can smoke weed or take cocaine or something just once, and when they're taking it, or maybe it's the place that they take it and the people they're around, but these entities then, once the etheric field's been opened, they connect in, and then these people can't shake them off and they become a problem.
Okay, so for someone who doesn't take drugs or doesn't drink, is there some way that entities like this can be attached to someone through a curse?
Yeah, so curses obviously are another thing, really. So if you get involved with people or religions or different types of social structures, there are many people that walk in the planet that are aware of the spiritual world, and the spiritual world is a bifold world, really. It's positive and negative. So you can work with positive or negative entities.
So what you're explaining to me are the possibilities of how this person became affected. But I'm wondering if Chen can tell us what actually caused it. Is there any possibility of that?
Yeah, I can ask him actually. Okay, so one of the key problems, really, of course, is the immune system. So when the immune system's compromised, then the etheric body is compromised by default, really. So he's saying that this is what's happened in this particular case, that the immune system has been massively compromised, and obviously as the immune system starts to be compromised, you lose your physical health, and therefore your etheric field is compromised as well.
Okay,
so he's suggesting that this person has basically been in a hospital environment, and hospitals tend to be one of the worst places, really, because there's obviously a lot of people that are ill, there's lots of people with disease, and it's almost like, to me anyway, a hospital is almost like a pub to an alcoholic. It's like the best place that they can go, because you've got a collection of ill people that have got compromised immune systems.
Well, that's another subject of debate that we can continue with perhaps at a later date. But for this person right now, what does Chen suggest is the remedy?
So the remedy is basically to go through a complete clearing, etheric clearing. So we detach the negative entities that are connected, that are manipulating the person's thought process and speech, and we basically put grounding back in place, so that again connected back into the Earth's energy and the grounding of the planet from a physical perspective, and we just clear up the etheric field and remove all of the negative contamination.
Okay, so you can ask for that to be started.
Yes, yeah.
And how long would it take, do you suppose, for the person to feel the effect of that?
So it's normally within 24 hours, really. The etheric field, where I find some people feel the effect instantly. Other people, it takes a little while for the etheric field to change the vibration of the physical.
Okay.
But I mean, we can. So again, if I explain the way that I do that, actually, we want to do that.
Okay.
So again, if we look at the grounding, so I can see this if you like, patio slab in between the person's feet. So I just basically visualise a pair of hands, mine normally. So a pair of hands that come in, and just literally pull it out and throw it over my shoulder, which then removes it from that person's etheric field. And then I'm looking at the barbed wire that's been tightly wound around them completely. So I just start to unwind it with the same hand. So I just take it off as though you would if you were unwinding it from a plant or something that you had in the garden. So that's like the easy part. I normally then look at the wider etheric field, which again is sort of contaminated with lots of negative energy. So I see that as just big black blocks of energy, almost like clouds, really. And I found that the best way that I can remove them quickly, because I used to work on each thing individually, but I could spend hours. So I now just basically visualise a big golden flame, and I send it from my hands into the outer etheric field and see it just burn off everything that's negative. So again, everything is kind of done with intention. So my intention is just to remove everything negative from this person's etheric field.
Like using a spiritual blowtorch.
Basically, yeah, just a very powerful blowtorch, really. So rather than go through everything individually, and I used to miss things and have to come back a day later, and so now I just visualise almost like a nuclear explosion that just basically, disseminates everything that's in that field that's negative. And that then normally leaves me with the actual entities that are left, because at this point we haven't really dealt with them. So this is where I can kind of get into a conversation with them if I choose, or I can just ask my guide and his team to go off and detach and remove. So again, most of the negative entities I come across that have been with people for a long time, it's almost like when they first connect, they connect just one link, if you like, one cable. And the longer they're with the person, the more cables they connect, and they connect it into, the backs of the eyes, the throat, the ears, the nose. So they start to control everything. And when it gets to the point that I just see a massive wires and connections and links, I tend to know that that's going to take, my guidance team quite a while to disconnect.
What you're describing to me will offer opportunities for lots of people to ask a wide variety of questions. So I don't want to go into that now, but perhaps people with an interest in asking questions can contact us, and we can address them in time. So just to finish off what we're doing, this is a live scan of a real person who's in trouble and wants relief. So what needs to be done in order to round off this particular session?
Okay, so my guidance team have started to remove the external attachments, if you like. So to remove the actual entities, if I don't engage in conversation with them, which I tend not to do now because time is always precious, and I found that there's no real value in talking to them, because you're talking to something negative to start with, they never tell you the truth, and they'll try and do deals with you that you can end up tying yourself up with. So I just basically visualise, so this is where I visualise a sword. So I've changed the pictures because I make things more interesting for myself, really. So I just visualise a big sword that I have, that I take out of a sheath, and I just run it around the etheric body of the person, so around them in a kind of cylinder effect, and then up over the top of their feet and their head. So with this sort of, my intention is that I disconnect and cut every single cord that's connected to these entities. At this point, these cords are still connected to the entities. So I then visualise a hand that takes hold of all of these cords, and I pull them towards me, so all of these entities come forward and I can see different faces, and this is where they normally try to create some type of fear, really. So they show themselves as, a horned devil or anything you might be scared of is what you'll see. So it's the worst pictures that you can bring up in your mind, and the worst films you've ever seen is the pictures that you'll see.
Like the boggart in the Harry Potter film.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And that always happens. They always try to, because of course they realise at this point I've actually connected to them, and I'm actually holding them at my disposal as opposed to the other way around, really.
Okay.
So at this point I normally then pass this to Chen, so I give him these connections, and all I then see is him, if you like, pull normally to the right, and all of these entities all disappear in a flash.
Would this have a parallel with those practitioners who perhaps call upon help from Archangel Michael? Yeah,
so I've used Archangel Michael in the past and Raphael to do things.
Right.
So sometimes I've had problems, and Chen suggested that we could do with other types of help, and I've put a thought out that I'd like to connect, but again it's very a very precision connection. I'm commanding to connect to an archangel that I perceive to be good, and is going to be working with my guides. So again, for me the connection is my guides will deal with the archangel, and I still deal just with my guide.
So what I hear you saying is that there's no set ritual that will deal with all this. You have to be flexible. And dynamic in how it's.
Well, I did used to have sort of set procedures, but I found that I always got tripped up because you always miss something, or you get to a point whereby you're dealing with a different entity that might be connected to a person a different way, and if your ritual doesn't capture that. So another thing I used to do was to change, when I look at that person that I'm clearing, I would actually change the view to look in ultraviolet and then infrared, because I'm actually seeing them in what I consider to be my normal spectrum. And then I realised that if I turned the picture to be an ultraviolet view, I would see entities that are living in that frequency of the spectrum that I hadn't seen. And then I'd change over to infrared, which is the other end of the spectrum, and I would see other things that weren't visible in my ultraviolet view.
So you've raised a very, very interesting point there, that we can see things on a spectrum of energy vibration, and that can be visualised.
Yeah, that's again. So that was one of the things that I learned not to do. Really, was not to kind of be too bespoke and too process orientated. It was more a case of trying these different types of techniques, and each technique would then give me a different view on things. And sometimes I would look at somebody and see nothing, and then I'd switch to an infrared view and see absolutely teeming with negativity.
Interesting point. Okay, let me stop you there and ask if there's, before we finish this particular section, this lesson, if you like, is there anything else that needs to be done before the lesson?
No, so from all I then do basically, so we've cleared the etheric field, I then obviously put the person back into some form of protection. So I question their sovereignty. Right. So say, is this client sovereign, yes or no? Is the client sovereign, yes or no? Is the client sovereign, yes or no? I won't finish until I get 3 yeses.
Okay.
So if I get a no at some point, I think, okay, there's something hiding that I've missed. And this is where I learned not to be too process bound, because the same process won't work every time. And then I would get a no back and I think, oh, but I've done what I would normally do, which would normally clear somebody. And then I have to go and have a look at it in a different way and find whatever else is still connected to their etheric field.
Okay. So I'll stop the camera rolling now. If you'd like to carry on with that process uninterrupted, and then...
Well, I've kind of finished actually from my perspective. Yeah, so I put them back in their sort of protected bubble.
Okay, so we
I've questioned their sovereignty, which is as I expect it to be. So it's just for my guys to finish their work, really.
Okay, so the next step is just to contact the client. And ask how they're feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Andy, thank you very much.
That's okay, my pleasure.